Early morning in Glendale seemed like a perfect painting, the sky a brilliant blue without a single cloud, golden sunlight spilling onto the sidewalk in front of a small cafe, where cheerful chatter mingled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Yet, beneath this serene facade, an eerie premonition slithered through the air, cold and invisible like the blade of a knife, forewarning that something was about to shatter. At an outdoor table, James Harper sat in silence, his lifeless eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. He was blind, but his senses were sharper than most, not because of his sight, but because of Titan, the German shepherd sitting beside him, ears pricked like living radars. Titan was more than a guide dog. He was a war machine, forged in the fires of a brutal K9 unit, now retired yet still radiating a commanding presence, like a warrior who had never forgotten the scent of blood and danger. His sleek black coat shimmered under the sun, but his cold, calculating eyes never stopped scanning the crowd, as if he sensed something no one else could. James took a sip of his coffee, his hand trembling slightly as he felt the steady breath of Titan beside him. They were the perfect pair, a blind man and a dog that had stared death in the face, bound together by an unspoken bond far deeper than mere survival. But their peace didn't last. A deafening roar tore through the air, a monstrous sound like a beast breaking free from its chains. 3 motorcycles surged forward, kicking up a storm of dust, their engines snarling as if they sought to devour every other sound around them. The cafe fell silent. All eyes turned toward the 3 men stepping off their metal steeds. They wore jet-black leather jackets, patches on their shoulders revealing skulls and flames, symbols of a gang no one wanted trouble with. Leading them was Travis, a towering brute with a smirk dripping with arrogance, his eyes gleaming with the predatory glint of a wolf on the hunt. He moved like he owned the place, his gravelly laugh slicing through the tense silence, sending an involuntary shiver through a few onlookers. Travis scanned the crowd, as if searching for prey. Then his gaze stopped, not on James, but on Titan. The dog tilted his head slightly, ears standing rigid, muscles tightening beneath his fur as if ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. "That's a big dog," Travis murmured, his voice carrying an edge of curiosity laced with provocation. He stepped closer, his heavy leather boots thudding against the pavement like a war drum. Titan locked eyes with him, no flinching, no blinking. This wasn't the gaze of a mere guide dog. This was the gaze of a soldier who had once faced criminals, who knew the scent of fear and had never forgotten how to respond to it. Travis chuckled, but there was a flicker of tension behind his voice. He crouched slightly, as if testing Titan's limits. "Is he as smart as he looks?" he taunted, raising a hand in a dramatic gesture, as though to toy with a caged beast. His gang snickered, but their laughter died quickly when Titan let out the faintest growl, low, nearly imperceptible, yet thick with unspoken threat. James, though blind, felt the shift. He set down his coffee, his voice calm but tinged with an underlying tremor. "Everything all right?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The crowd began edging backward, whispers circulating, nervous glances flicking toward Titan. The dog remained still, but his body was coiled tight, like a compressed spring ready to explode. Travis took a step back, but his smirk didn't fade. He glanced at his friends as if to prove he wasn't rattled. "Relax. It's just a dog," he scoffed, voice thick with mockery. But Titan didn't care for words. His unyielding stare pierced through Travis's bravado, stripping away the facade and laying bare the darkness underneath. James rested a hand on Titan's back, whispering, "You all right, buddy?" Titan shifted closer to him, never breaking eye contact with the gang leader. At that moment, an unseen battle had already begun, not between men, but between the instincts of a battle-hardened warrior on 4 legs and the arrogance of a man who had no idea what he had just provoked. The air around the cafe grew heavy, thick with the weight of an impending storm, waiting for the inevitable moment when it would break loose. The air around the small cafe in Glendale had thickened, heavy like fog before a storm. The roar of motorcycle engines had faded, but their echoes still vibrated in the chests of those present. Travis, his smirk unwavering, stood like a predator unsatisfied with the hunt. His eyes gleamed with dangerous intent, locked onto Titan, the German shepherd who remained as still as a statue, yet every fiber of his being was coiled, ready to strike. James, though blind to Travis's threatening gaze and arrogant stance, felt the unease through Titan's quickened breaths. He placed a hand on the dog's back, whispering, "Easy now, buddy." But Titan didn't listen. His pricked ears twitched as if tuning into a frequency of danger only he could understand. Travis stepped closer, his polished black boots thudding against the pavement. Like a countdown to an explosion. Behind him, his two companions watched with expressions that were half curious, half amused, chuckling as if enjoying a show. "Hey, blind guy," Travis said, his voice lowering with a mocking edge, "your dog seems a little tense. Doesn't he know how to have fun?" He leaned in, extending a hand as if to touch Titan, not in a gesture of friendliness, but as a test, a silent declaration of war. Titan tilted his head slightly, his dagger-sharp eyes never leaving Travis. A faint growl, barely audible, rumbled from deep within his throat, quiet, but enough to make those nearby instinctively step back. James tightened his grip around his coffee cup, his voice calm yet unsteady. "He doesn't like being teased. Maybe you should leave us alone." The words were gentle, but the warning within them was clear. Travis laughed loudly, his raspy chuckle attempting to drown out the tension. "Relax, I just want to see if he's as smart as he looks." He suddenly raised a hand in an exaggerated motion, pretending to pat Titan's head. The crowd held its breath. Titan didn't move, but something in his eyes shifted, from cold observation to razor-sharp focus, like a blade drawn from its sheath. A nearby woman gasped, "Don't do that." But Travis didn't stop. He reveled in the game, in the feeling of power when all eyes were on him. Then, everything escalated. As if spurred on by the silence, Travis suddenly kicked a metal chair beside him. The sharp clang echoed through the cafe as the chair skidded toward James and Titan, making a few bystanders scream in alarm. Titan reacted in a flash, dodging the chair with a warrior's precision before snapping back into position, feet planted firmly, body lowered as if ready to lunge. A deep, guttural growl erupted from his throat, no longer a warning, but a clear threat. The crowd stepped farther away, some raising their phones to record, eyes wide with a mix of fear and morbid curiosity. Travis flinched, though he masked it with a forced chuckle. "Easy, dog. Just joking around." He raised his hands, but his eyes betrayed him, flickering with anger and the faintest trace of fear he refused to acknowledge. James stood up, his grip tightening on Titan's leash, his voice now firm. "I don't know what you want, but you should stop. Now." Titan took a step forward, positioning himself squarely between James and Travis, his sleek black fur bristling like needles. Travis hesitated, not out of fear, but because he caught the glances of his friends, mocking, expectant. "What's wrong, Travis?" "A dog scaring you," one of them taunted, laughing loudly. The words poured gasoline onto the fire. Travis clenched his jaw, his smirk twisting into something more dangerous. "It's just a damn dog," he muttered, voice unsteady with barely contained rage. He stepped forward again, this time directly toward James, as if to prove he wasn't backing down. The crowd stirred uneasily, some shouting, "Stop it!" An older man at a nearby table suddenly stood, his voice booming with authority, "That's enough, kid. Don't take this too far." But Travis ignored him, his eyes now alight with pride and defiance. He reached out, aiming to shove James's shoulder, a move that wasn't just provocation, but a declaration of dominance. but Titan was faster. In an instant, the dog surged forward, not attacking, but placing his solid body between them like an unmovable wall. A deep, thunderous growl tore through the air, vibrating with raw, unrestrained power. Travis stumbled back, his face pale. The cafe fell into absolute silence, the air so thick it felt like the whole world was waiting for something to explode. James tightened his hold on Titan's leash, his voice trembling but resolute. "I think you should leave. Now." Travis stood there, breathing heavily, his gaze darting between Titan and the onlookers who now stared at him with contempt. His friends said nothing, their laughter long gone. He swallowed hard, forcing a smirk, trying to regain his bravado. "Fine. I'm outta here. Not worth my time messing with a mutt and a blind guy." But as he turned and walked away, his shoulders stiffened like a man who knew he had just lost something far more valuable than his pride. The sound of his boots faded into the distance, but Titan never took his eyes off him, his body still trembling with adrenaline. James slowly sat back down, his hands unsteady as he stroked Titan's back. "You all right, buddy?" Titan tilted his head slightly, but his eyes remained locked in the direction where Travis had disappeared, as if he knew this wasn't over. This wasn't the end of the nightmare. It was only the beginning. The sun had set, leaving Glendale shrouded in silent darkness, but the atmosphere inside James Harper's small apartment was heavy, like an omen of something sinister. James sat in his worn-out armchair, his fingers tracing the familiar contours of his furniture, searching for solace amidst the storm of emotions from the morning. Titan lay at his feet, but not in a resting posture. His body was taut like a coiled spring, ears pricked forward, eyes locked on the door like a sentry who hadn't blinked. The ticking clock on the wall was the only sound, but to James, each beat felt like a drumroll heralding an impending horror. He stroked Titan, whispering, "Today was strange, wasn't it, buddy?" Titan didn't respond, only tilted his head slightly, but the way he breathed, rapid and shallow, said it all. Then, like a knife slicing through the silence, the distant rumble of motorcycle engines cut through the night. At first, just a faint murmur, but it grew louder, roaring like a predator closing in. Titan sprang to his feet, muscles rippling beneath his sleek black coat, a low growl rumbling from deep in his throat. James stiffened, tightening his grip on Titan's leash. "What is it?" he asked, his voice trembling despite his attempt to stay calm. The engine abruptly cut off, leaving behind a deathly silence blanketing the apartment. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy, echoed in the hallway. Titan moved toward the door, lowering his body as if ready to pounce. A loud knock rattled the fragile wooden door, making James flinch. "Who's there?" he called out, but there was no answer, only a faint, insidious whisper from beyond, like the hiss of a snake slithering in the dark. "Relax, blind man," a voice finally said, deep and chillingly familiar. "Travis." Titan let out a sharp, menacing growl, his teeth bared, for standing on end like sharpened spikes. James stepped back, his trembling hand fumbling for the phone on the table. "What do you want?" he demanded, his voice firm but laced with fear. Travis chuckled dryly, his laugh seeping through the door like an unspoken threat. "Just wanted to talk. No hard feelings about earlier, right?" But his tone was anything but friendly. It was sharp as a blade, carrying an intent that James didn't need eyes to perceive. Titan advanced, positioning himself between James and the door, his growl now louder, a final warning before chaos erupted. Outside, the footsteps changed, no longer just one person, but multiple figures shifting stealthily around the building. James heard the faint scrape of metal. Was it a knife or something worse? He pressed 911, his voice shaking as he spoke to the dispatcher. "There are people outside my home. I think they want to hurt me." Titan flicked his eyes toward James briefly, as if saying, "I'll protect you," before locking back onto the door. The footsteps stopped, replaced by something even more unnerving, the slow, deliberate scratching against the window frame. A chill ran down James's spine, his grip on Titan's leash turning his knuckles white. "They're here," he whispered into the phone, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. Then, a sudden crash, someone slammed against the window, the glass trembling under the impact. Titan lunged, barking furiously, his powerful body slamming into the door like a living barricade. A curse erupted outside, followed by Travis's growl of frustration, "Open up, or I'll break it down." James backed into the corner, his voice now a mix of fear and defiance. "The cops are coming. Get out of here." But Travis wasn't deterred. Another brutal kick hit the door, the wood splintering under the force. Titan crouched lower, teeth bared, ready to strike the moment the barrier fell. James could feel the heat of Titan's breath, the unwavering loyalty of his companion who had faced death before and wouldn't hesitate to do so again. Suddenly, the wail of sirens split the night, flashing red and blue lights cutting through the curtains. The footsteps outside turned frantic, followed by the roar of retreating motorcycle engines. Travis cursed one last time before vanishing into the shadows. Titan continued to growl, his body still coiled with tension until the sounds faded completely. The door burst open, and two officers stormed in, their flashlights sweeping across the room. "Are you all right?" one of them asked. James nodded, still gripping Titan's leash. "I'm fine, thanks to him," he said, his voice breaking as he ran a hand over Titan's head. Titan panted, his body finally easing, but his eyes never left the darkness beyond, as if he knew Travis would return. The police scoured the area, finding muddy footprints and a knife embedded in the window frame, a clear sign of malicious intent. "He's gone for now, but you should be careful," one officer warned, his tone grim. "That dog, he's not ordinary. Trust him." James nodded, the cold weight of unease still pressing on him. After the officers left, he sank onto the floor, pulling Titan close. "Thank you," he whispered, tears slipping down his cheeks. Titan licked his hand but kept his ears pricked, listening to something beyond James's perception. That night, James didn't sleep. The wind howled through the cracks in the door, carrying an unspoken message from Travis: "This isn't over." Titan lay by the entrance, motionless, his eyes glowing in the dark, ready for the next battle. James knew, deep in his heart, that this was not the end, but the beginning of a war where Titan was not just his guide, but his final shield against the darkness lurking just beyond the threshold.